All right. Well, we had some trouble with our audio. I don't know, is the song over? Are we good? Welcome to PCA Next Gen Live. We've had very little go wrong, but it's going wrong this morning, so that's awesome. And that's perfect because today we are talking about what are the challenges facing youth ministry. I'm Matt Hedinger of Old Cutler Presbyterian down in Miami, Florida, and we've got Mr. Mikey Puckett.
Yeah, what's up? What up, baby?
Whose voice has gone up 3 octaves since we started talking.
My name is Mikey. Or Mickey. I should say Mickey. My name is Mickey. Fun fact, I hate being called Mickey. I will say, you can call me a lot of things, but call me Mickey. And, partially growing up in Orlando and Disney. And
Oh,
yeah.
With a mouse.
That actually might be a great question.
Also, I've been told I look like a mouse, so that also.
Well, the headphones don't help right now. You kind of have Mickey ears.
It's the teeth mostly.
Yeah.
The teeth. I get the teeth.
So we've got Mickey with us.
No.
Sorry. I know.
You
And then we also have the silent assassin.
Yes, in the shadows today.
Hiding in the shadows. Lara Jensen with us.
Are you gonna say that?
I actually. Go ahead, Lara.
If you can see me, yes, yeah. Lighting's not too great here. It's interesting because it's a little gloomy in South Florida, which it's usually sunny, but
Central Florida.
I've done podcasts.
Look.
I've done podcasts for years, and I would always be made fun of by my co-host because I would do things on the podcast that they would have to articulate because it wasn't video. They're like, for those of you that don't know, Matt's doing X.
Right, yeah.
Which was lost on the audio podcast format. But now you're the only person I've ever been on a video podcast that we can't see.
Yeah.
You're like a ninja. But I had Mikey brought up a great question. What is the worst nickname, or what is the name that you revile the most that people call you? Not the worst name you've been called. That's a different conversation. I promised Steven we wouldn't cuss.
Mikey Puckett rhymes with an interesting word.
I just said.
I can't. I have to take the bait, man. I can't not take the bait.
We need a little thing that'll ding every time we think Steven Estock's going to have a heart attack.
Yeah, we need a producer that literally says, "Don't do it, Mikey."
Okay, but so people would call you Mickey, and you hated that.
Yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah. What about you, Lara? Is it just Laura? Do you hate just being called Laura?
I get Laura. I get Laura. I get Lara. Lara is probably the one that I'm like, please do not call me Lara. I had this teacher in 7th grade who insisted that my name was Lara, and I go, no, it's Lara. She goes, no, it's Lara. And I'm not salty about it to this day. 25 years later, whatever. But yeah, it would probably be Lara. Be my number one.
My daughter is partially named after a very dear friend of mine that passed away before she was born. A dear friend of my wife, and both my wife and I, and he's Haitian. So her middle name is a Haitian middle name. And my mom told me I spelled it wrong. I was like, really, Mom? Really? The Russian that grew up in the Midwest is correcting my Haitian spelling? That makes a lot of sense. I love it when people are experts on things that they know nothing about.
Yeah,
I was called everything you could imagine growing up, but there is one that I absolutely hate that I've had to embrace, and that is Maddie.
Okay.
Matty. I always hated being called Maddie. I don't know why. Always rubbed me the wrong way. And then I married my wife, and she had an older brother who's since passed away. But his name was Matthew. He had Down syndrome, and he was Matty to everybody in the family. And so they just couldn't help themselves but call me Matty sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was adorable. Mm-hmm. So like you can't be mad about that. But
right.
Maddie actually made it worse. So like at one point when we moved in with my in-laws so I could go to seminary, Matthew and we'd been married for like over 10 years at this point. So like we're not new, like we weren't like newlyweds or new to the family or anything. Matt started introducing me around town when we would be out. He would say, "Oh, my name is Matthew McLean Sr., and this is Matthew Hedinger Jr." So I became his junior somehow. And to this day, everyone calls me junior now in Maryland. Like, and I was like,
junior is I'm a junior, and it is feels a little offensive, you know.
Yeah.
Like I'm a junior cheeseburger or something.
That's literally where my mind went. I went to like the McDonald's, like I'll have the junior.
I'm the
cheeseburger.
Same stuff. I got cheese. I got tomato.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's a little smaller, shorter. Maybe it's because I'm short. That's maybe why junior always bothered me. You know what always would? Sorry, this is another random tangent. It was the Burger King commercial with the little hands. Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah.
Where he's eating a Whopper. You know what I'm talking about, Matt? You've not seen this?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was like, this is. Sorry, I just randomly thought of that.
No, that's okay.
I also have little hands, so tiny hands.
I have embarrassingly small hands for a man.
Well, I'm the same way.
My wife and daughter have the same size hands. It's embarrassing. Since we're just confessing random things, but yes. What, Mikey? I should stop you. If you stopped yourself, I should stop you. I shouldn't.
Did stop. I did.
Yeah,
I am filtering right now.
Yeah. Oh, good job.
Filter.
I have a
Filter.
t-shirt. I have a t-shirt idea. The filter has been compromised. I think that would be.
That's maybe this podcast at times.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's what we should have named
Or
it. The filter's been compromised.
And this is what happens when we don't have an editor and we just are live.
That's right. That's the problem with being live.
Filter has been compromised.
We need a sound bite that says that. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get back on track and let's say so we're going to talk about what we think are some of the biggest challenges facing youth ministry today.
Real quick. Right before, subscribe, hit the bell button. Hit the button, subscribe, do it. All right.
That's actually really
Friday,
appropriate.
11 a.m.
I'm really glad you said that, Mikey. I was going to make a comment that you're like a middle schooler interrupting a Sunday school lesson, but that actually was
I've
legit.
always related to middle schoolers better. Always. Just more common. Okay, sorry. Challenges in youth ministry. There are no challenges, Matt.
Right.
None at all.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Smooth sailing.
I don't have any.
The money, the prestige. What's the problem?
Yeah, like what are you guys complaining about?
So what do you guys think are some of the biggest challenges facing our students? Let's start with the students. Like what do you think are the hardest things that they're facing?
Lara.
Lara. And now I'm gonna be off the podcast. No. I mean, the thing that comes top of my head is just the mental health issues, which we all know, the statistics and the research that's been out there. But just yesterday, I had one of my small group leaders call me and was sharing, what some students were saying in their group on Wednesday night. And it just goes back to depression, the anxiety, stress. I think the pressure to perform academically and socially is heightened and leads to all sorts of mental health issues. And so I think that's the thing that I've seen most in my students. They're in this pressure cooker that's just, I'm like in middle school, I was probably still playing with Barbies, and what you guys are, it's just, we had a high schooler last year say one of the reasons why they love coming to youth group because they feel like they can just be a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, that says so much about what is just the pressure that they're under. So that'd probably be, I think, the top thing is just the mental health rise in students.
You talk about the value of just coming to youth group. I I had a volunteer. I mean, I think I kind of had this mindset, but it was really cemented by this volunteer that talked about she was a professional counselor and she was a volunteer, and talking about the anxiety and the stress and the value of youth group always being the same, being a constant, like having a set form. Now we can deviate from the format on occasion, but we also have rules for when we deviate from the format. So even the deviation has a format itself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And because I think that's one way that we can love them is creating stability and predictability.
Yes.
In an environment where they don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that there are more acute issues. I think that there's issues that students are facing that might be more intense or dramatic.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's anything facing more students.
Yeah. No, that's a good way of putting it. Yep.
I think that this is the most common.
Right.
Common ground that everyone is struggling with on a level. I mean, there's obviously way more acute situations that we have to minister to, but I don't think there's anything more widespread. And I think the anxiety and the stress. So I don't like talking about this, but I'm diabetic. Yeah. And as a diabetic, it's not just that I have high or low blood sugar, it's that affects every system in my body. And that's what I think the stress and the anxiety does. It affects these kids on a cellular level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mikey, what would you add? What do you think about that?
Kind of the first thing that came to my mind was just, is this relational connection that lacks like sacrifice, like cheap relationships. I think there's relationships, but they don't involve the sacrifice of your wants and needs and desires. If it does, then you go and find someone else who doesn't require you to sacrifice your wants, needs, and desires, which is interesting because when you think about relationship, in my mind, I've never really necessarily thought of relationships as necessarily easy, but I feel like there's an expectation for students to, if it's not an easy relationship, then it's not a worthy relationship to have. And I just think there's just got to be, that's got to be really difficult, because one of the other things is like, well, what if people have to sacrifice to have a relationship with me? Like, I don't want to burden somebody. I don't want to put weight on someone. So I'm going to be as least burdensome as possible on my friends, and also find friends that are not burdensome on me. And like, can you really be friends if you don't carry each other burdens? Can you really have friendships if you're not willing to even confront each other and create conflict with truth and grace? Like, where you're like, hey, this seems out of accord with your character, out of accord with the Bible, whatever it may be. I mean, are there friendships like that peer to peer for students? I don't know if that's unnecessarily true, unless, and this is another reason why youth group is powerful, especially if small groups are integrated into your youth ministry, is there is going to be a conversation about sin, a conversation about sacrifice, a conversation about pain and hurt, and there's going to be moments where they're not going to like each other, and what does it look like to work through that? Currently, right now, my sons, they're not in youth ministry. They're in kindergarten and preschool, but they play with the neighbor kid every single day. And I told him, he's like, I absolutely love it because they fight. They fight all the time.
Yes.
Physically, but also like they resolve it. They learn to be resilient. They come inside and they tattle on each other and they gaslight each other and they say, this kid did this and this kid did that. And it's like, no, they didn't. You're just trying to rat this kid out. And then you talk it through and work it out with them. And then they learn how to do that same dance with each other. I think that's something that's really important that that students are facing right now, is just the lack of ability to have relationships that can go through seasons of difficulty and then continue in those relationships and to navigate those, because one, we have the gospel, we have Jesus who sacrificed for us. He paid the price so that we can offer grace to not only ourselves, but to others. So anyways, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately too, because it's something has definitely shifted significantly where it comes to like even the experience of kids coming to a large group has shifted significantly. And I'm interested, and I wonder if that's one of the reasons. I don't know. Matt, you got any thoughts?
Well, Patrick, who we just posted his comment, who's joined us, he's right on track with what we're saying, and mental health and friendships being such a big issue. I think, and I'm going to say a word that's going to make everybody kind of tense up, but I think it has a lot to do with social media.
Yeah.
And I think social media this is the inflammatory speech I'm going to use. It is connectional pornography. It is a shadow, cheap, tawdry, self-serving version of connection. And it's breeding malfunction in that area in our life. Right? So those of us that knew how to form relationships IRL, right, that we could do that in real life and use social media, we can see the difference. Like it's like the Wizard of Oz. We were kind of in black and white, and we opened the door and we saw color. We experienced both of those, so we can see the difference. Sorry, I'm getting a notice. We're being real. We're live, right? That they had to evacuate my daughter's school.
Oh, wow.
Briefly. Okay, everything's okay. Sorry, the fire department showed up at my daughter's school. We're live. Told you, folks. Yeah, so I think what's happened is created these false connections. If you feel very connected by the number of people that you have and the actually very small amount of stimuli that you get from it, in the sense of like a like, a comment, there's a small range of what that interaction looks like, but it's created a false sense of self and false sense of connection. And it's cheap and shallow.
Have you noticed this? And this is maybe more recent too with social media. I've noticed that. So kind of when it was coming out, it was like the selfie, like take a picture of yourself. Here's the,
Yeah.
But I've also noticed that there's actually people are not posting anymore themselves. Social media has almost turned into just a consume.
Yes.
To me, I feel like something shifted in the last year or two, where it's gone from essentially like it's really gone from I'm going to post my stuff, create my stuff, and now it's more of like an amusement feature. It's even less engaging. It's more of like there's professional people who post, there's and those, that's been something really fascinating to see and notice, is like our students don't really post anything anymore. They might share to a story, you know what I mean, but they don't post, and they don't really make comments or say things. They do comment, but they don't like post like a picture and then write awesome day doing this, like if there's anything, I feel like it's just like photo down from spring break, you know what I mean? And it's just a list of photos. It's more like recording their memories, but then like what are they using it for? I wonder if it's being used more now too. One of the struggles is like just for pure amusement, like brain mush, like they're just pacifying themselves.
I just put up what Patrick said. I posted it as we were talking, that said, you take this and you couple it with our students having been in elementary school when COVID happened. I think that plays heavily into anxiety and the missing developmental steps of building friendships.
Right.
Well,
it even goes back to when I was talking about my sons, like they're getting these interactions that you could not get in COVID. You weren't allowed to play with your neighbors. You know what I mean?
Right.
You quarantine yourself, and so this is something that is definitely, I think, is a great point, is because you're developing those skills to be able to have conflict at a concrete level. Like you have a toy that I want and you're not sharing it, and it's not very complicated necessarily. It's easy to resolve, but you can prove that it is possible to work through things on a very practical, concrete level that they can then take into middle school, take into high school, where it's like, okay, I can apply these same tactics of like, what do you want in this, and what do I want in this, and how can we compromise and work through this? And if we can't, what does it look like to ask other friends what they think and get wisdom? You know what I mean? Or parents,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
you know, and bringing in a community that can help you. So I like this this conversation because, like you said, social media is pornography of connection, of friendships. It's just a cheap way of feeling like you know someone, but you really don't know someone. You actually
Right.
just see
Right.
what they want you to see. And you know what? It may be just an invitation to this generation as students is to unmask, take off the mask, take off the filter, and actually reveal to people yourself. Be honest, be confessional, be sincere. I would say that's one of the words that I think this generation of students longs for, is sincerity. If I
Yeah.
were to think about it, like, I'm like, man, I really think kids want, and they can tell when you're not being sincere. So if you get up there
Mm-hmm.
and you're flashy or whatever, doing whatever you
Mm-hmm.
can, they can sniff that out so fast because they are eating it every day, you know, on social media. I mean, they're consuming it. I mean, they know what it
Yeah.
tastes like, what it feels like, what it makes them feel on the inside. And then, so it's like, it's an invitation to us as adults to, like, you know, to, when we minister to them or when we parent them or whatever it may be, is to be honest, to be true, and it's also just for us to even know our stories, know ourselves, so that we can give ourselves to our students and kids. Anyways, I'm kind of transitioning into a different
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I want
version.
Lara, I want to ask you, like,
Yeah.
something that I've observed, and I don't want to say this is the same as mental health. It's not the same as mental health, but I want to put it in the same conversation. What has your experience been with the quantity? Like, how many kids are you seeing? Are you seeing a trend in neurodivergence? Like, you know, kids that process the world around them differently than, and this is where we talk about, like, being on the spectrum, stuff like that.
As far as the quantity of that in students, I haven't seen that in the context where I am as much in kind of how they're processing things. But you know, I'm sure, you know, I get the one or two students every once in a while that you know, I do see in that way of, I think, just how they're processing things. I think to go back on not to go backwards, but I think something that the word that kept popping up in my mind as we were talking was this isolation problem that this has all, the more isolated students are. But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it as much. I don't know. Do you guys see kind
Yeah,
of what you're talking about, Matt?
yeah, I feel like I've seen it just growing and growing and growing, and
Yeah, and
I try to interact kind of proactively with the children's ministry as much as I can. You know,
right.
I like to kind of start that process, even just interacting with kids and on Sunday and stuff like that. And I see it as a real challenge. Like, and I feel like I'm seeing it more and more. I feel like I'm seeing it grow.
Yeah. In what ways are you seeing it specifically?
Like, what kind of issues am I running
Yeah.
into? Like oppositional defiance disorder.
Yep.
I mean, that's a tough one. That's real tough.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
The fact that I even know that term is
Yeah.
difficult.
First time I'm hearing it.
Yeah, I mean,
I just kicked those kids out of my youth group, so I don't have them. Hey, leave.
Yeah, that's
I'm
all.
That's a joke.
Sorry, I'm looking at our comments now. We got some.
I was sending a book out in the comments.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, I think you're posting as me. That's what. Okay. Yeah, very cool. So if you're in the chat, it's going to look like I said it, but I'm going to show you. This is really Mikey posting this, talking about a great book for this anxious generation.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah, I feel like that there can be a trap to say, you know, these kids just need discipline. That's the hazard that I see, like that their parents aren't like as if their parents aren't enforcing rules, or when they're really just kind of adapting to the kid. And I'm not talking about gentle parenting. We're not having that discussion. I'm talking about kids that have, like I said, see the world, engage the world, process the world differently. We need to adapt to that. We need to help them get to, where they are. And I remember seeing this kind of in the beginning when I started doing youth ministry, especially when the Xbox came out.
Oh yeah.
And I had kids that would do stuff while I was teaching, and I was like, hey, stop doing that. Like, stop doodling or stop doing whatever. And then I was actually confronted by a kid that said, I actually hear you better when I do this.
Yeah, I've heard that said too.
Yeah. And it was like, I understand. I can focus better if I'm doing X. And I believed him. And I said, okay. And I took him at their word, and I pushed him a little, and they were. And then it was the Xbox that opened my eyes. This shows you how old I am. But like, used to be able to hook 4 Xboxes together. That would be 16 people playing. Now it's easy online, but I mean, this is a while ago. You get your buddies together, get 4, and then you're tracking 15 other data streams simultaneously. You're aware of 15 other data sets that you can, this is relevant, this isn't relevant. And like, it's all coming at them so fast. They can process information so much faster than I can. But I want them to sit there and listen to one data stream talk at them for 20, 30 minutes. And that really shaped the way I teach. And that's why I like interruptions, Mikey. Like when I was joking about, like, my kids interrupt me all the time to ask questions, to say something that's not helpful always, but we dialogue. I can't do a lecture. I don't want to sit through a lecture, But anyways, yeah. So that's quite a bit about what our students are facing. What do you think is the greatest challenge for families when it comes to church participation or discipling their kids? A little pivot from our students to the families. What do you think is the most difficult thing there?
Well, one of the things, I think parents on their phones is a problem, if that makes sense. As guilty charged, my children, I don't know how much, and I'm curious, I'm sitting there and I'll hold my phone and be talking to them. It's the same thing with the data streams of, like, I'm showing them this, like, giving them a minimal amount of my consciousness to them, my presence to them is maybe leaving them lacking in intimacy that they need to be able, and maybe it leaves them lacking too, not really being able to understand and know me. So I'm just thinking as a parent, working with my own children is like, I wonder if they grow older in middle school, when they're in their counseling sessions, they go, my dad is always on the computer or on the phone. Yeah. And that, I would not be surprised if that's something that's painful for their experience growing up, like where they would say that. And
that's the corner bar. It's the corner bar that dad goes to before he comes home.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter, or I'm just on my email, or I'm just constantly subconsciously picking it up and looking and so I think that's one of the difficulties of trying to disciple your kids, because you're distracted. Your mind is put on other things other than your own children, or your, even if you're a youth pastor too. It can happen to all of us while we're working with kids. It can just be so quick and so easy. I remember when the watches came out. Do you guys remember the Apple Watches? I think they've gotten a little bit better with this. Yeah, you got one. So when it first came out, though, like, everyone was just like, I just remember this experience of, like, sitting and talking with people and this. That, like, I don't know, do you have a setting, Matt, on your Apple Watch that keeps you from, because this is a very offensive thing.
No, I actually think that's more polite. Hot take, I disagree.
You think this is polite?
Oh.
I think the goal is, the reason why I like the Apple Watch, I don't always do this, so that I can see what notifications I'm getting. I can do, is this anything I need to address? No. If I pick up my phone and check it,
yeah,
you get sucked into you don't even remember why you picked up your phone. Right. And now you're looking at 6 different things. The Apple Watch sucks as a scrolling device.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't want to scroll it. But I'm saying, like, you're sitting there with, like, lunch with someone, and all of a sudden they're doing this.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it.
Is, a distraction for sure.
But I don't know. I feel like I haven't noticed it as much, so I've wondered people maybe they've gotten used to it. I just would imagine that once you feel the vibration, you just by nature flip it. But I would assume that because I mean I can have a little more self control if it's in my pocket. Like I'll feel it vibrate. The same thing's happening though mentally. Like I'm checking out as soon as I feel it vibrate. But it's I can at least say I'm not going to pull it out of my pocket, and signal to the person. Even though that's what literally my body is like shifting towards doing as soon. That's how trained we are by it. Anyways, it's one of those, and those studies have come out saying that the phones are literally designed to suck you in. Literally designed and purposely designed to keep you as much focused on it as possible. So I think it's one of the great threats that faces us when we try to disciple our children is because our attention is going to something I think that is very meaningless. And I'm one of them. I don't have a solution.
What I would say is that it's not a threat to discipleship in the sense that it's keeping us away from modeling to our students. It's what we are modeling.
Yes.
We are discipling them in the ways of the phone. Like we are discipling them in the ways of distraction because we are always modeling. Whatever we're doing is what we're presenting as this is the way to be.
Right.
So we're actually discipling them in something that's hurting us even.
Yeah. And the other side of things too with technology for parents and people trying to disciple their kids is that you are also experiencing life online with similar like-minded parents and like you're getting into these little tribes that hold the same exact values that you hold and then everyone else is an enemy outside of that tribe, and so you're in this tribe, you're in this little pocket, and you're on those groups, and you're in those, your For You page is perfectly designed for that version for you, and you're like, I can never imagine why anyone would ever homeschool their kids. I can never imagine why anyone would send their kids to public school. I can't believe that.
And every statement is absolute, total, complete, like I would never, this is the worst, this is the best, this is always.
I can tell you how many times I'll talk to a parent, I get like just a quote, I'm like, you just heard that on TikTok. You're literally, you have not actually, like that is just a one-line.
You don't think I TikTok? I TikTok. I know what you're saying.
First of all, let's talk about Instagram moms. Okay, can we just tangent for a second?
Go, Mikey, go.
I need you Instagram moms to cut it out, okay? We do not need a gazillion little mechanisms to try to organize our organized closets, and we do not need cleaning techniques that require troves of all natural chemicals that are still chemicals that we have to apply.
My favorite thing on social media is when I see like a parent or even just like making a cookie and it's going to take 6 days to make like to decorate. I'm like, that thing may not even get baked in my house. I might just eat the cookie dough. I don't understand why you're decorating something that's going to last 4 seconds. Because cookies in my world are like Cookie Monster, like just crumbs flying everywhere.
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
Instagram.
No, that's great.
Instagram moms are a great threat to disciple.
The opinions expressed by Reverend Michael Puckett. Lara, what do you think? What do you think is?
And I think too. Another thing that we model is the busyness, right? Like over scheduling ourselves in some ways to death, right? And so, I've seen a lot of that. Just the church involvement sometimes falls to the bottom of the list, or the involvement in youth group falls to the bottom because of all these other things that take priority. And so again, that our own busyness is a threat to discipleship, and what we are, whether it's like the amount of different sports activities, it's like club soccer, school soccer, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like what other sport or event does? So I think that's the thing that I've seen the most. But an encouragement, I think in that as well, is that I've had some parents who have noticed that in their own parenting, and who have said like, hey, I want Wednesday night to be a priority in my child's life. And so yes, they have these other things going on and they might miss a couple of Wednesday nights, but we are going to try our hardest to be here as
Yeah.
much as we can. And so I've seen in with some parents that shift of like, no, we realize that we are putting these other things above church, above
praise
the
God. That's
importance
awesome.
of that. And so I find that as an encouragement as well of like, oh, okay, like, and then how do we just continue to encourage parents in that, disciple parents in that of like, yeah, like life is busy, but how can we, I think, help them in that and fostering the importance of not just youth group, but of church involvement in their students' life. And then what I've heard too is parents say like, no, like my son or daughter, they want to be here. They
Wow.
want to be at youth group on Wednesday night. And hearing that is like, man, that's so encouraging. Like the Lord is at work in the midst of our busyness, in the midst of students' busy lives. Like this is the place they want to be. That's awesome.
Well,
You know, so
you're touching on
um, y-
something too that's like it's the answer to all of this. Like the church and youth groups stand out so much right now because it's such an interesting thing that so many people with so many different ideas and thoughts can come together and
yeah,
break bread and worship. And even though they're Republican and Democratic, even though they like Elon Musk or don't, even though they have a Tesla or not, like they can come.
Well, no, I mean, those divisions are generally in two categories that our kids are
Yeah.
experiencing. And it is your educational context,
yep,
right? Homeschool, private school, Christian school, public school. And then it's socioeconomic.
yep,
And when you can be in a room where you're not capitulating to one of those cultures, but you're embracing people from all of those cultures, and you can have friends from different contexts, we're really practicing church.
yep.
Where the unifying concept is our interest in
I
Christ.
mean, there's not a better moment than to send your kid to youth group than today's moment. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or to get them into the church than right now, right? Like this
Yeah.
is kind of like an
Yeah.
exciting moment in history.
is.
see
because-
past the pizza and dodgeball. See past that
See past
and
it, yeah.
understand that this is about them practicing being together in a time where they don't know how to be together.
And I would say too, like, I people welcome to the parents that call you and say, my kid, said this happened or that happened. And this is just an opportunity to gospel waltz with these people. Like, this is
Yes.
just, don't see it as discouragement, but see it as like, hey, I get to take this parent who actually clearly
Yes.
cares for their child because
Yep.
they've listened to their child. Now, where children will say things that happened and it will not be actually what happened, but still,
Right.
like to have those discussions, to gospel waltz that out with them of talking about, the truth and the grace and working that out together with them. It's just a gospel opportunity. And how can that happen online? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Right, right.
all you do online is just hit the power button. Like, I'm done. Or,
unfollow.
click, unfollow,
Yeah.
Unfollow.
cancel, block. But in a church, relational, physical, embodied setting, you have to have conversations and lend yourself to maybe potentially be wrong and
Yeah.
to maybe hear something different. And it's a wonder. I mean, I just think it's a great opportunity, a great moment in the history of youth ministry, because there was maybe like you were saying, like this busyness, like we're competing against all of this, but then it's like, well, where else can you go and play, go and eat, and like, which is also bonding, by the way. Like, it's really hard to hate someone you're eating pizza with. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, like, I don't know, but this pizza's good. God's be glorified in this pizza, and then sing songs together. I mean, what a unifying thing, and to also be reminded of the gospel, like the important thing, and to have some perspective, because like maybe it doesn't really matter as much that this person, said this online, and maybe really what matters is what Jesus has said, and maybe I can kind of give some grace here because Jesus has given me grace. Like, it's just what a sweet thing. And intergenerational relationships, right? Because you're sitting with a volunteer, an older person, probably potentially that can also give you some life perspective.
Was that a shot at me?
Yeah,
Am
I
I-
try.
am
I
I-
actually
am I-
just point
Am
my
I the
hands.
yeah?
I was
Am I
like
the older
pointing at the
person?
screen
Yeah,
at you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Malone's not here, so I got to take the old man hits.
Yeah, you gotta take it.
I go ahead.
There's this every Wednesday, and this is just it's just such a beautiful picture. But we have, like probably most youth groups, we have the 9 square set up, and what we have seen the past several months is that in the game room there are hardly any students, and we're like, are they even here tonight? And we look outside, and they are all like 45 of them at the 9 square in line talking to one another. There are cell phones in the grass because they're just like putting them down everywhere. And security's like, hey, I found this cell phone in the grass. And it's like they're throwing that aside, literally, their phones. And it's just this beautiful picture where you're seeing them connect in a way. And like you said, Mikey, what a moment I think right now in the youth group context where we're seeing this, and we're helping students and hopefully families foster this connection that is lacking. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna address something and then kind of pivot to our last section. But one of the things I think I struggle with is in this culture where everything is practice or you don't play. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't show up to band or your sport or whatever, then you don't get to participate. And there's this punitive aspect to that. I think it's a real challenge for us to express to kids, hey, we missed you last week. To recognize that they weren't there out of appreciation without them hearing, why weren't you there?
Yeah.
I really struggle with that because I want kids to know that I want them to be there, but I also don't want to be one more voice that's like, why aren't you putting and that's where I want to burn people to the stake. I can't stand band directors, coaches that think their thing is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
In this kid's life, when it's a good piece of it, it's a valuable piece of it, but it's not the ultimate. And so that's something that I struggle with. So what do you guys think are some of the challenges that are facing us, like the field, the profession of being a youth minister, youth leader, director, pastor? What do you think? Why do we have a shortage of people doing it? I mean, there's less and less people studying it in schools. Programs are shrinking and closing. Why do you think that is?
Which is interesting because, like we said, there are no challenge. Like, come on, you get paid a lot. Like, come on, guys. Why are people doing this? This is easy stuff.
You keep your hair.
It's not demanding at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well,
no
Mikey,
gray hair.
Can I say it in a overly grossly simply by just?
Well, thank the Lord you said grossly simply, like not just gross. I thought it was just gonna be gross, but go ahead.
That's what. Yeah.
It costs. It's sacrificial.
Yes.
Like it requires great pain. It requires dying. It requires to be stretched thin, to be stretched out. It requires to experience the nails of Jesus in the hands and feet, and it takes the gospel to understand how precious that is. To be poured out like that, to be emptied out like Christ was emptied out. That is a terrible and wonderful thing all at once. And I have come to find that is just what I desire to do with my life, is to pour it out and to, and in so doing, drink deeply of the grace, the covenant of the new blood in Christ. Even thinking of Easter coming up, just being like this sacrifice for the sake of my hero. The person I love and honestly love the most, and I love and enjoy him, and he loves and enjoys me. Now I can say that on a podcast, you know what I mean? Yeah. Casually for 1 hour, but will I believe that in the next hour? I don't know, but that's the struggle that I have to wrestle through. But I do think that's one of the reasons, though, I think it's really difficult, because where are people practicing the sacrifice and the beauty of pain and being resilient and great. You know, like this isn't being necessarily modeled over the last very, very well over the last 5 years. Anyways, I'm sort of just kind of, I want to kind of tee up something for you guys to, I hope you guys can.
There we go. Yeah, I think it's a lot of times it's inconvenient too. And it's
So
like,
inconvenient.
because love is like loving other people is can be inconvenient. And it's like, are you willing to be inconvenienced? And it's like, I keep going back to that, like, and it, like you're saying, Mikey, it's like this dying to yourself. And that is hard and beautiful stuff, but it is hard and it is challenging because it's like, we're selfish. Like, and I want, I want my rest. I want, and I think about the list of the things that I want.
Well, have you heard that
and
language that people use on like relationships? They call it rate. They use an investment word, return on investment.
ROI.
So
ROI.
have you heard people talk about friendships like that? I've actually
Yes.
have listened to podcasts and YouTube where the guy's like, "How do you pick your friends?" I'm like, "Pick your friends." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I look and I evaluate the pros and cons, and literally they're saying this like a real thing. Like, does this person add any value to my life?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? In youth ministry, middle schoolers and high schoolers add zero value to your life. You know what I mean? But what value do I add to Jesus Christ? You know?
Right. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I think that there's lots of practical things that are a challenge. And we joke
Right.
about them all the time. And I think compensation is an issue. I think even being understood, I think, is an issue. But I was discussing with my daughter. We were at a family dinner, and we went out one night. And an acquaintance or someone that I used to know that was a pastor that came up. And this was not a sexual thing. This was a very bizarre intellectual error.
Fell down the stairs.
And my daughter just was like, why? Why did he do that? Why did he do that? And I started to articulate the need that drove the negative behavior. And it caused me to reflect the grace that comes from a 12-year-old that looks at you and says, "Wow, you're fat," or "Oh, that's an ugly shirt." Like the complete lack of filter. The filter has been. There is no filter to compromise.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, if you start to think you're something special, right? Middle schooler will take your legs out from underneath you. Now, high schooler will think it, but they may not say it. Middle schooler will say it.
Middle school. Oh yeah, they'll roast you.
Oh yeah,
Right in front of your face. Yep.
Right
no
in front
filter.
of you. And but they love you. Like, they are not
Exactly.
being mean. And there's something that makes it hard to think that you're better than somebody else. When you're living with that kind of honesty. And that is a beautiful grace that keeps you in check and can make you think, okay, settle down, Junior. You're not all that. You know what I mean? But like you said, Mikey, that is a hard road to hoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just talking the other day with a youth leader who was in tears because she puts on all this work and faithfully works and faithfully prays and faithfully invites and faithfully creates space for them to show up, and then they don't show up. And she asks why, and they say, well, we just didn't feel like it. And then, like, it's just crushing. I mean, absolutely crushing to, and then it's like, well, God, am I doing something wrong? You know, God, have I failed you? Are you mad at me, God? Like, am I not doing enough for you, Jesus? You know, like, but it's just that, like, and then you think of like Christ on the cross, and not one of his disciples is up there with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, like Jesus has tasted that to the fullest, of that experience of people not showing up, to something, and not praying for him in the garden, or, and being betrayed, for 30 pieces of silver and denied 3 times. It's like, as kids, like, we experience that weekly, people's acting like they don't even know us, and they don't
Yeah.
even though we know them and they do know us, and then all of a sudden they pretend like no, like you're just an old person or whatever, or you're just weird or a creep or I don't know. No one's ever called me that. So.
I feel like Mikey's working something out right now. Let's.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But
just sit back
but
and watch.
That denying, we feel that.
Yeah.
That's really difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like you're never like it's not like when you're preaching a sermon and you go stand at the back of the door, the back door, and everyone walks by and tells you great job. Like you don't get high fives for youth talks. You don't don't get but
youth ministry is preaching embodied. You know what I mean? It's you can go up and preach, and we can there's something really nice about that. Just like reading your notes that you did in your comfortable office, and you got into your software and Logos and Greek and Hebrew, and you just really soaked it up, and now you just say it, and then you get to high five everyone, and then go home. I'm sure there's emails like, hey, you said this weird thing, but youth ministry is really this embodiment of like, well, we wrestle all of that out, like live,
and have to keep everybody alive.
Yes.
At the same time, like
at the same, yeah.
If Jesus did not do this, I would not be able to do this. Like quite literally, if you think about it. Like if this was not modeled for me in Christ, what this is
well, and I think that's the blessing. The blessing is that we get to practice. We don't connect with Jesus when everything's great. No. And we don't identify with Jesus when everything's great. Like you don't have an awesome day and go, you know what? I feel like Jesus. Mm-hmm. That's a bad that red flag. That's a problem, right? But you can be like, wow, I feel alone. I feel like I've done like everything I did was in vain.
Yeah.
Wow. Now you really can say, yeah, Jesus actually did experience those things too, and you can connect with him in those moments and on that, which is what I love telling kids.
Yeah.
When their friends turn on them or their girlfriend dumps them or their boyfriend, it's like Christ knows that rejection. Christ, he knows what it's like to be betrayed and rejected. But it is a constant reliving of that and constant, that is the blessing and the grace, but it's not easy and it's not painless.
I'm curious about you guys. Like, what when you guys are struggling with sin, when you guys are walking through your own sin, what is that like in ministry for you guys? Like, I mean, just think about. I mean, it's just so hard to be in youth ministry, but then to have your own problems and sin bubbling up in your marriage, your kids, your friendships, even with your students, maybe. Like, how does that play out as you are like this ambassador for Christ?
Ooh, yeah. That's a good question.
You're asking that with 7 minutes left in the hour.
Oh, my goodness.
Good job. Good job, Mickey.
Next week's podcast.
I think that there's a distinction that I've made over the years where, and let's make it a little less dramatic. Let's say, I have a fight with my daughter or I have a fight with my wife. Right. Let's say it's just.
And then you got to go give a talk on.
Yeah, and you got to go do youth group. Like, and the problem is we're probably largely like empathetic and emotionally driven and emotionally kind of available and upfront with our emotions with our kids. So it's tough when you get jarred and then you have to go be that. But and maybe this is a male thing, I don't know, but I have to put things in a box and say, okay, as someone that's paid by the church, I have to be a professional.
Yeah.
At this point. And there are going to be some nights where you just got to get the night done.
Yeah.
You don't get to say, I'm sad. I don't want to do youth group tonight. You don't get to say, I'm really wrestling with this. I don't get to teach Sunday school tonight or this morning. You know what I mean? There is a point for the paid, whether it's part-time or full-time, you have to be a professional.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest answer to that, Mikey, is you can't work any of that out or use your ministry, any ministry, doesn't matter, as a barometer for how you are spirit. You can't look at the youth group like everything's going great, ergo I'm okay. And you can't look and say, I'm struggling with this, therefore this isn't okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can't, those two are separate things. Now, of course, like if there's rampant sin in your life, it's going to affect your ministry. I don't mean that. But
Right.
you can have low numbers. You can have low success and be okay spiritually.
Yeah.
And you can be struggling and God blessing your ministry at the same time. We tend to conflate those. And we also, we can share our struggles, but I think those should always be kind of a little bit behind us.
Yeah.
Even if it's just by the day, like, and you can be upfront and honest and say like, hey guys, I'm struggling today too. You're tired. I'm tired. You having a bad day. I'm kind of having a bad day too, but you can't make it about you. Like that's a tight rope to walk, but
Right.
I don't know. Those are just kind of my thoughts. Lara, anything you'd add to that? To Mikey's doozy of a question?
No, I mean, I second everything you said, Matt. I mean, that's just so good to think through. And I think for me, it's like the days where I don't feel like whether I'm sad or whatever it is, it's like it just drives me more to the cross and to Jesus and being dependent upon him of like, man, I like Jesus, I need you to do this. And you know, like you said, when those days where it's like you feel great and you've had a great day, the less dependent or the less I think I don't need Jesus on those days too. And it's like, no, I need Jesus all the time, especially on a Wednesday night, because that to me, there are moments where it's like, I know the enemy hates when we meet on Wednesday nights. He hates that. And so sometimes there is the spiritual warfare that can happen. And so just being dependent upon Jesus. And sometimes on a Wednesday night, like if it's a tough day, sometimes it's me just going and listening to a worship song. I listen to the same one. It's called Come and Rest by, I think, Mission House. And it's like that to me helps of just like listening to music before to kind of reorient my emotions and reorient myself to the gospel and to Christ. And that helps me sometimes just, hey, I just need to get through this Wednesday night and be a professional. So just dependence upon Christ. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Guys, thank you very much. This has been, we could take any one of these and do a whole episode, one comment.
Right.
But Mikey and I are about to go off and do a retreat together. So super excited about that. Mikey's going to come down and speak to my kids at our high school weekend retreat that we're leaving in just a couple of hours. So thank you guys for joining us live on the chat with Patrick and Drew. Really appreciate you guys being here and commenting, and hope you guys enjoy watching this later. This is PCA Next Gen Live. Thank you guys very much. I'm trying to stop it and it won't let me.
You want me to stop it?
Yeah. There we go.